So there's some ideas about care so that we can discuss that concept. The idea of care is an important topic in medical humanities and both doctors, paramedical staff, and scholars are concerned that care is a very important concept. And in some sense, it's a very unproven. We all want to be cared, but we want to care and we want to be cared. But the idea is that with this concept, so it will be available to us. That's what. And before I start, there's something which I wanted to share with you that not connected with this. It's about reading a Malayalam book, which I think is absolutely crucial for scholars in medical humanities. Anybody has read Rajashree's book, Artharayagam? Rajashree, the Malayalam novelist who wrote Dasharini and Kalyani. And it's an amazing book on the question of medical cure. Satrayam is a place where somebody who is born, maybe now paternally as a transgender, is treated to become a male for a pass a test. Right? So it's a peculiar patient who is in a very ambiguous zone, and the treatment is not for suffering. And this particular place is taught between various states. It's almost a recreation of the story of Shikandi in Mahabharata. So, but it's a terrain where it's in a state, the cure happens in a place where there is no stable political power. Right? So it's very interesting for those of you who want to think about what it will be in medicine, serious therapy, and knowledge. That novel also treats medicine as a knowledge component, cognitive enterprise, to be practiced outside the idea of state. So it's entirely unrelated, but I thought I shouldn't leave this place before sharing the excitement of reading this nearly classical working. So the question about care, again, I started thinking about care as an issue when I faced the prospect of living a life without taking the COVID vaccine. Right? So for me, it was never a question about what is the justification, why didn't you not take? Right? We have the answer from that problem. Right? We value individual liberty, whatever, etc. The state is imposing. And I don't think, I never thought about freedom in those terms, right? Nor as a paid employee of the Indian state ever, liking the Indian state. And also it didn't have a question about whether modern science is modern medical science is scientific. As I shared with you earlier, that whether medical science is never relevant, it's never been a relevant question for me to approach medicine. And most of the time, at least in the last 15 years, I've been treated by quacks, right? And I cannot get treatment from a modern medicine quack because there are no quacks in modern medicine. Every modern medicine expert you meet is already certified. Hope there will be a time where modern medicine also will be practiced by amateurs and quacks. But now we don't have. So, that way for me, it was a question about, not what I worried about consequences, whether the vaccine is really tested, consequences. I don't think, like I take other traditions where there is no clarity about consequences. So it is, consequences are not, and those days I thought whatever I collected information based on the trials which happened and the meta-analysis that happened, I thought the advantage of the vaccine will definitely be more than disadvantages. But still one doesn't take the vaccine. But that conviction today I don't have. Right now we have all kinds of scholars have come out about vaccine trials, so we cannot really say that. But still, at least that was never a consideration for me. But for me, the rational question was, if you don't take vaccine, then what are the rational inferential relationship to which you are going to be committed? Basically, how do you live a life if you are not vaccinated. That is where the rationale, not like is it justified if I am called in front of a court of law, do I have justified? And I understood this predicament as an act of care. How do you we understand when the society accepted that taking vaccine is your show of care? How do you lead a life, unvaccinated life, but as an act of care? Because when I don't take a vaccine, I am signing on to two things. I am signing on that I will die. There is a high probability of me dying and high probability of me killing someone. So I'm signing up that I will be the cause of my own death and the cause of others. Right? Now, how do you elaborate this peculiar situation as one of a caring life to others? When you have another model of life is there. And now we know that there has been an Australian study about the behavioral patterns of post-COVID societies, where they have now, by global studies, their conclusion is that our appropriate COVID behavior was not led by concern for one's of life or governed by the concern for other people's lives. Right? It was an imitative behavior. We just did what other people did. Right? And so they are the another statistical study, but the results is interesting. So that was one. So that when one realized that one is actually signing up for a life where you don't want to belong to the humanity as whose only political goal or primary political goal is survival. Right? That is what the COVID-19 was. You have to be alive in order to live, in order to do politics, etc. Right? So you don't want to sign up to humanity whose primary end is survival. Can that be a caring life? Is there a model of care we can think about like that? Second, the two incidents in another occasion I shared with some of you that see, I teach in IIT and we had a demonstration of care there. In IIT, in the last few years, a lot of students commit suicide. So one of our Dalit students committed suicide. So the IIT was very concerned because already a Dalit student is intellectually weak because he came through reservation. And now when we commit suicide, he is also mentally weak. Right? So the suicide is almost seen as illness. Right? Yes, illness. And IIT's response was immediate to strengthen our psychiatric department. Right? The act of care was being just employed so many psychiatrists. Numbers. And the students then, that was a very, one of my colleagues thought that it's a very caring gesture to do. And, but the students complained that the psychiatrists don't give them any time. They just want to go there to talk, but the psychiatrists in 2 minutes dismiss them. In fact, one of our common friends and teacher, P.R.K. Rao, once said the problem about modern medical situation is that doctors don't have time and patients don't have patience. Right? So this is the situation in which we do the care. Right? So that was one model of care which we had. We had something like suicide and suddenly therapeutic intervention. Right? And then suicide. Suicide is another thing. So you prevent suicide through two ways. One is that you establish a psychiatric care system. But then interestingly, one of the IITs patented a fan, right? Because they actually patented a fan where it will break if more than 25 kilos hang from that fan, right? So you can't commit suicide in those rooms because the fan is very weak. And apparently, statistically, I find apparently this is a fairly good solution. Even I trusted modern psychiatric care because humanity has not been very inventive in tools of suicide. We're still hanging, taking poison and all that. Right? So if you can actually prevent some of these things, you can just, at least obvious ways of suicide you can do. So this is a peculiar care situation I faced. Another thing which occurred to my own institution was that there is a well accepted care system in modern society is called security. Right? You try to move into Kerala, people will tell you they will offer your house in a gated community. That's an act of care that your life is looked after. Right? So IIT also now we have a lecture hall complex where even students who enter for our lecture, we have to show the evidence. Right? So 8 o'clock we teach and then the whole battery of security personnel standing or checking everybody's identity. So I was asked them, why are you checking it? They said, हम classroom में terrorists को घुसना नहीं देंगे. Like they are preventing terrorists from entering our 8 o'clock class. Students don't come in when the terrorists. So what happened is once that the professor, who is looked very young, he was rushing to his class and they insisted on ID. So the professor said, I've been teaching you for some time. They said, no, you have to show your ID. And he slammed the security guy. And the security guy fell unconscious. He had to be admitted in the hospital. And the whole campus, which is very angry campus, rose in support of the only provisionally they will recognize. And that's a security person. They started with the powerful professor slapped a very weak and body and issue raised again. That will give you an information about the only security is the only way. So this is another paradigm for care which we have. And another situation, there are some snippets I want to share with you, just to thinking about it. This happened during the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the American army was in Vietnam. And the situation of Vietnam is people were very miserable. And one of the villages occupied by the American army, very poor, and the children were susceptible to all kinds of illness and epidemics. So the American army, moved by genuine care for the people, got vaccines, and I think it was diphtheria vaccines was given to the children. Now the Viet Cong revolutionaries came to know about this. They went to the village and chopped the left hands of all the children and piled it in front of the American family. Now, how do we understand this? Is it that I'm sure in our TV shows we will say that it's heinous crime and everybody who committed the crime should be punished. Right? But do we also notice the revolutionary fervor of an army who had to do this amount of cruelty? Right? They thought that was a very misplaced show of care when a war is going on. You can't do this just because you want to. So how do you see this? Should we totally condemn the view of the revolutionaries, or every revolutionary action involves these kinds of absolute cruelty, which goes against our every sense of care? I think our notion of care also we should pitch it, to a situation like this if you want to open it for discussion. And after a couple of days, we have been talking about this whole debate with Beard on evidence. It was not to question the credentials of a science or as skeptical. The issue is that we wanted to understand what is the nature of experience in the hospital, in the medical situation. What is the experience? Is evidence an adequate description of the experience? Are there experiences which cannot be caught by this evidence? It's again not the modern medicine is handled. They work with the notion of evidence, which is so crucial to their practice. But the whole practice involves all kinds of other experience. Now, to get an idea about last day, I think we have lectured by Mathu on our idea about body. The idea is that do we have non-medical knowledge about our body, which is so essential for the body to be a body, right? And is there any way in which medical science can respond to it, right? It's relevant for medical science to constantly think. That's what medical humanities has been doing. So this is also the context where we want to perhaps look at care. Right? There's what is this experience of care? There's a certain way of doing it. That is, the doctors actually do handle evidence But we all know that it involves suffering, it involves more richer experience than else, but it has no cognitive value. It has no scientific value, only evidence. So we will lead to another part of the clinic to address these other experiences. Let's have nurses, let's have people who will do all this compassion and care and that. But we doctors, we are not equipped to deal with it. Like, so the whole idea doctors don't have time in that we only have that 2 minutes to deal with it, and that's very important to persuade. But we accept that there are other components, so that the nurses and paramedical staff, etc. The classical distinction between facts and value. Right? We can only handle experiences which have adequate some notion of facts, but all values are richer thing, but they have no cognitive value. Right? So one thing which we could really think about is that is this care involves any cognitive value? Is there anything to know in order for you to care? Also, is there anything you need to care in order for you to know? Right? Both these questions are very important. Whether caring involves any knowledge or also knowledge involves any care. Now we say no, knowledge doesn't involve any care because it can only do with facts. But care doesn't involve any knowledge because it's all matter of emotions and sympathy and empathy and all that. And that's also when you really look at the clinic, what is the place? What is a hospital? Is it a hospital where sick people are taken care of? Not exactly. It is a place where disease discloses the truth. Right? It's artificially set up like a laboratory. The doctors don't go to the residents to be able to treat us, right? But that is why the doctor-patient interaction is so short. Because that is the place where you are called upon, and there is a way of speaking, there is a way of documentation, there is a way of observation through which illness have to speak its truth. Illness can suffer you outside the clinic, but inside, and that doesn't need much time, right? They have now set up the procedures so intelligently that it takes 1 minute for the illness to disclose its truth. Now, there is a lot of time in. Then you need to have all these supporting systems, steering system. That's one way to understand nurses, bed, and all that stuff. But the clinic should be seen as so. Counter to this, you have anti-medical people trying to say, like Ivan and which calls hospitals, iatrogenic machine. Right? This is the place where you collect and distribute illness. That's what the clinic is. Right? And then they also have this strange data. I think if you really push for data, that's very strange. I mean, there is reasonable data to say that whenever doctors go on strike, the mortality rates increase. Now, what is the value of this? I don't think it's there are people like Foucault when he gave the lecture said, I don't want to use these kind of stupidities against modern medicine. But that's not that we are interested in. So that's also a question about the clinic. It also involves a question about understanding the body. Right? This is our idea about body being a machine. Right? Where the body, each organs have its functional role. Is it an adequate understanding of body? I think when Madhu's talk happens, I think in the many traditions you will find the body, what makes my body different from this table is a certain knowledge it has about itself. Right? And any description about the body function, etc., need to involve this irreducible knowledge the body has itself. Because I can distinguish my body from table and my body from the mountain's body. This is not minimally my body is capable. It also has many other cognitive things whether we should take that. So in a care situation, the first cognitive problem you face is that how do we know other people's suffering? Like how do I know other people's pain? How do I know other minds? Right? Quite possible that you are all, except me in this room, everybody is all. Right? Is there any way I can really make right? And many philosophers have debated it for centuries, and we don't have any evidence. Like, it's like there's no evidence that you are not in your last name dream. There's absolutely no. So that's philosophers that if you want to justify knowledge, etc., just have fasting here that you're no way to justify to me whether you are not in your last name dream. The same way people say that look, there is no way we can really find out others are not Buddhist. But we all know that others are not Buddhist. Right? In every interaction with you, I have reiterated the fact that I know that you are not a robot. Right? And suppose at some strange moment it turned out that one of you turned out to be a robot, it will be a immense sadness for me. Right? And we have some friends here, you must have seen that scene in movie Blade Runner. Right? Blade Runner is about the world is full of robots. We created them, but they are big nuisance. We sent them to the planet, but 5 of them come back because they think that problem between man and machine, even machines have a 5-year short lifespan, human being have a long lifespan. Anyway, they come back and we human being are scared, and there is a detective who can actually distinguish humans from robot. So he has been employed to identify this 5 robots. So now there is a woman robot, and I think Ruthie. So she thinks that she's a human being, she's capable of emotions, she has memory, etc. So the detective proves to her that look, you are actually a machine. Your memories are actually the memory of the programmers, doctors' memories. You are just a machine. And she breaks into tears. At that point, the detective falls in love with her, knowing fully well that look, you are a machine. And that's the human ability to acknowledge humanity in others. It's a knowledge. Right? It's not like you ask me a test or anything, but another kind of knowledge. But this is how do I know other people have pain? Right? So traditionally we thought that we actually draw analogy. Right? I have headache, right? So I treat whether anything looks like to me. Right? Now this paradigm, if you know, it just doesn't work because when I know that you have headache, what I have is not that there is something generally called headache, which I also have, you also have, but I know that there's your headache. This headache is not mine, but yours is signed on that headache. That's how electricity is. It's not like I project something. That's what people say, way in which imagination and projection techniques are used by which I have. And we have never sat down and found out ever, okay, we will all these things are headache, these are toothache, none. And the idea that it is occurring to somebody who is not me is the what is picked up in this, right? So when we have things like empathy, when we understand other people's suffering, it somewhere involves some familiarity with the knowledge that there are other people headaches, there are other people pains in the world. Right? Now that is possible only if I have some kind of clue about it. Right? And I already have some kind of clue about it. For example, I can only see this side of the table. I don't see the other side of the table. And I see your bag there, I can only see the outside of the bag. Right? Now, do I really worry about whether that bag has an inside? I don't worry. Is it why is it because all the bags I have seen so far have been inside. So it's a probable guess. We will do an RCT and say probable guess that this bag also has an inside. No, I see bags with insides. Right? I have only seen cables with other sides. That's the way I can see. Like it's not that when I turn around and I come with the great surprise, oh, this is a cable with the other side. Right? It's because I perceive cables and bags in the world which is shared by all of you. Right? I have prior familiarity to this world where cables and bags appear. right? So that way my perception of everything other people are into. Right? That's one reason why I can say that we is only part of a we that we perceive. But that's also not adequate. Then I am saying that all of you are in somewhere like, but all of you are specifically somewhere. It's not that all of you belong to a category for people who are not me. Right? That's not real me. I also perceive you as individuals, specifically others. Right? And see, we all have this idea about now the kind of postmodern attitude is that there are many cultures, there are many lifestyles, we should be tolerant to everyone, etc. So we want to be tolerant to other cultures, provided they stay at a distance. But if you encounter me as a specific other, I get traumatized. Right? That's what the American West always says to you are all great cultures, but stay in your countries. Don't apply for visa and come with your dirty, hard, sweaty bodies. Right? Now they have enough. Right? They are saying that we don't want you guys there, but we will do our cultural studies, etc. We will say that you are all other cultures, in everybody has a right, but don't come here as a specific other. But very often suffering comes not only that it belongs to others, but suffering comes to me. That's the most difficult thing. That it comes to me as the suffering of some specific, some absolute other. Right? The headaches of other people are just some absolute others' headaches. Right? So, that's why there are some kinds of, there are certain mental situations it is very difficult. Just the other day, in front of mine made a movie on postpartum depression. And the idea that the childbirth is associated with depression, that movie ends by saying that don't try to understand that person. Just if you can be around that person, do it. But there's nothing like understanding the person. So there is something about the other which is not amenable to my understanding, in the sense of shared things, etc. But still I can respond to this, suffering. So we have to somehow clarify these various sense of others. Right? And our body itself has a sense of other. I have for example, my own knowledge about me. Right? In some sense, it involves already others. Like we know that there is something called a mirror stage. Right? A child doesn't refer to itself as I. It refers to itself as Sanil. But by 18, when we see a mirror image or something like that, the child realizes that if they see the dogs or animals don't have any affinity for their mirror images. They will smell and they will see. But I get caught up with my image. Right? So I realizes as me in an image which is actually not me. After that, I can use the first person pronoun. And first person pronoun I is so difficult because only I can use I to refer to myself, but all of you are going to use I to refer to yourself. Right? For a child, it's a traumatic thing. But the child can actually do these things. Right? You can understand others are somebody who is, it's a very bodily knowledge. Because when the child looks at the mirror, other animals think that things happen there. But only the child thinks that things happening here. And here is what darkness. I don't know what is here. I can't see my own face. Right? But it can turn back and grasp that something interesting is going on here. Right? This is a very valid knowledge which is going to have the child. Right? And we also have more difficult perception of them. Right? For example, tickling. Right? Can we tickle ourselves? No. Right? My body needs to be very sure about that the tickling comes from somebody else. It's a bodily, and there are various neurological experiments to fool the body. If my own hand movements, if it can be sent through some tricky mechanism, and even if I am touching it, if my brain can get the voice somebody else, actually the tickle will work for it. So these kinds of knowledge in the body, I think we need to have an idea. And the other thing is the idea of justice. The care is morally very complicated because care is in some tension with justice. If they don't go together very easily. That this is something which feminists, right? In fact, this German moral development psychologist Paul, he did some experiments and he came up with this stages of moral development. Right? For a child first try to manipulate other people. They cries and then they get milk. And if it smiles, then people are happy and all that. It's the manipulating. Simply manipulating. Later that the other people have likes. Right? When I cry, it is other people are disturbed. That is why they experience. So I do that. After a while, I realized that no, in this house there are some conventions. Right? Father is a big guy. There are certain things I should ask my father. There are certain things I should ask my mother. Later, the child realizes that look, everybody in this house is an human. Right? There are basic some rights which everybody has. There are some principles of fairness in this house. So this is the way moral progress happens. Highest level is where you have formal rules like fairness. Like in this room, all of you come from various religious and moral motivations, but we have come to of fairness, and each of you will get a chance to speak and all that. So this is the height of love. Now, Carol Gilligan, this feminist, she questioned it. She said, look, this is a totally biased European male, because all the data said were white male children. He says women have a different way of doing it. Women notion of morality are not driven by contentless formal rules, but by attention to specific people. Right? So she has this peculiar dilemma called the Haynes dilemma. Like Haynes was a guy, his wife was very ill, and he didn't have money to buy medicine. Right? So he asked this question about stealing medicine, robbing a medical store. Right? And should he rob the medical store in order to support his wife? So when this moral dilemma is presented to a male audience, they will immediately start worrying about what is right, whether stealing is right, stealing for some genuine causes is right, what is right, is it a violation of right, etc. But when it is presented to a female audience, their question was, look, if he actually steals, who will look after the wife? Right? That was the most abiding concern of the women, not the other abstract thing about the formal rule of property rights will be violated. Or she had said, suppose if you are the office, if there is a male boss, the male boss will come up with some restrictions applicable to all. We should come at 9:30 and we will follow. But if somebody wants to bring a child from school, want to go around, it's immediately a violation of rules. Either you have to find his favor or compensatory off and all that stuff. But he said if the woman is the thing, she would actually allow a person who wants to pick up the child to go and request others to work more. She doesn't find that there is anything unfairness involved. This is the morally ethical thing to do. So, hence, they gave this argument that care is, as an ethical principle, is different from justice, which is based on contracts, fairness, equality, autonomy, etc. Whereas care is something which is, first of all, there is no contract. The caring relationship is a non-contractual relationship. And there is no equality because caring relation often involves somebody who is powerful, parent, child, doctor, patient, somebody who is powerful, and somebody who is not. Right? And there is no autonomy because one person is dependent on the other in some sense. Right? And the other is that it is always attending towards a specific human being. Its needs are important, not anything or general. Generalizable claims are not its object domain. What suits the particular person in that particular opinion. Another thing is that it has a peculiar kind of self-awareness. Care. caring itself is a very self-forgetting because every caring comes on expiry date. There is no lifelong care. Right? Caring has to really end at some point, otherwise it becomes dependent. In some case of some chronic illness, it might go infinite. But everybody knows that's not a love. Right? It's not something of content. It is going to end at some point or the other. In fact, some the questions of knowledge and care, one of the beautiful books which has come out recent past is Brinda Dalmia's reading of Mahabharata or caring to know. So she talks about these stories where there is a story about a bird which is as a nest in a building in a tree, and the tree gets very old and decay and it's dying. But all the birds have left this. But this one bird doesn't leave them because it cares for that. It is, for so many years it has given me actually leave that place. So the tree will be alone. It comes back every day. So finally, I think Vishnu or somebody realizes this and appears and gives Shaba Moksha to both the bird and the tree. What is important here is that God realizes that look, to be a genuine creation, it has to end. Right? Otherwise, if we leave it to this tree and the bird, they will go on forever. That's how there was this Yudhishthira's dog, which after everybody leaving, that dog pursued Yudhishthira. There again, the God will appear and give Shava because it just terminates at some point. Right? So this is also, it's not a blind care. Blind has this blind caring doesn't want to become justice, it doesn't want to become martyrdom too. Right? So it comes with that kind of another kind of tension in care is with choice. Right? The ethics of care and ethics of choice. Right? This is doctors sometimes tell you that look, these are your options, this is your choice. That's an absolutely careless situation to come. Right? The caring involves that somebody takes various initiatives, and it's not one of, because justice often says that it's one of its alertness is that we will not allow any exploitation, we will not allow any oppression. That's a very valid thing. But the attentiveness and care is not sort of geared towards that. Right? And also, it cannot be a choice relationship with what is the best option for a patient. The disease shouldn't have happened to that patient. That option is not available. Right? So the most interesting option from the situation is gone. Right? And then imagine a situation like you have an option between either taking the medicine and doctor's advices and living a suboptimal health, right? And having good food and drink and diet. What should I choose? Now, you can't even make sense of it as a choice because there are no criteria to deliberately. These are absolute choices, existential choices like that. Like there is no way. That way, in some sense, a caring, say, a consultation room is not a debating where people look at various choices, etc. And then another aspect of this caring relationship is, as I said earlier, the question about expiry date, a sense of temporality. Like for example, if I am caring for, if somebody falls unconscious, my caring demands a quick responsibility. Right? But let's imagine a situation like with, if my child is trying to tie the shoelace, right? What should I do if I'm a caring person? I can just jump in and tie the shoelace for the child, but that's very rude. Right? The child will never learn to tie the shoelace. So I have to wait. The school bus must be waiting outside, but caring, I just have to wait. Almost that meaningless time to do it for a future point. And also that care is in some sense has to be resulting to rejection. Right? That's one advantage of contributing to online courses. Right? You will never get to see rejection. Right? But if you really go and offer money to someone, somebody will say no. Right? And it has to be, that's this non-contractual nature, is that you will have to take rejection into it. So then, what are the resources of this caring? Yesterday we talked about the doctor counting on trust, etc. One reason why we trust is that somebody cares for you. And what are the basis of care? And one basis of care is humility. Humility is almost like in fact, the first discussion I tried to say that humility is actually a big lie. Right. So it's not even counted traditionally as a good quality. But we can think about relational humility. Relational humility is this idea that, not that I say I am ignorant, there are other people who even better than me. Right? Every situation involves that other people know. So the moment I am a cognitive agent, I am open to this possibility that other people know. In fact, Vandana Dalmia's book has this very nice story about one of the Indian monks, I forget the name. He was doing his tapas in order to get the ultimate knowledge. So one bird came and disturbed him. So he immediately made that bird into ashes. Right? And then he had problems and he was driven by guilt and all that. So then apparently the God came and said, see, only one person has an answer to your thing, and that's some housewife which is living far away. You have to go and ask her, and only that housewife has an answer. So he goes to this housewife. So housewife immediately says, I know, he was waiting for you. I know you will come. And he's a Brahmin, so he was very hungry lunchtime, so he wanted food. So she said, I will get you food. I think she doesn't turn up for a long. And then find out that in between her husband, and she served the husband first. Right? And so he asked him, why I am a Brahmin and it's curse from you if you serve your husband before me as a Brahmin. So she said, no, I care for my husband. I am not a bird. You cannot turn me into ashes. But my life is this, that I care for my husband. He will get my first treatment. So whoever is you are, you will get your, I know you are running after knowledge, but you will get your second treatment. So he said, look, I don't understand. Then she says, look, I can only explain. She actually have a long dialogue with me, so I can only explain this much. But if you want to really know about it, there is another person who is long away, a butcher. So he goes to this butcher who has this knowledge, and the butcher immediately tells him, and he is already Brahmin. So he said, look, he is not a shooter. So why are you killing animals? Isn't it sin? So he said that killing animals is a sin. I am not a shooter. If the shooter work, I shouldn't be doing it. But I have to take care of my parents. Right? To that, I will do anything. So I am doing it here. And you are infinite knowledge. Have you ever taken care of your parents? At that point, the monk really gets the ultimate knowledge. Now, what is the knowledge which he gets? What is the nature of that humility? I think it's not merely that there are other people who know better than you. It's also that there's no point to knowledge. There's no point to knowledge. The real thing this guy did is he cut off every relationship in his life and pursued knowledge. Right? In my view, what the story, which is it's not Brinda's reading, but my reading is that what he's saying is that this kind of pursuing knowledge as a separate activity. As we know, when we do research, we need to cut off from everyday other entanglements cognitively and in likely manner and do it. But we should know the conventional nature of these movements. Right? And we may have to sacrifice few things if you want to really find out something, you will have to give up something in your life. But to know that this is a groundless procedure, which is amenable to revision, and at some point somebody can just tell you the whole point is based because you didn't take care of your parents. In fact, other two people are saying that their actual knowledge is not pursued in this way. It existed with another relationship with life. Now, when you refuse to take this view, you need to have trust in something. That's when things like method comes in. Right? Whereas in my view, in actual science, what are techniques, right? That's what the physics department, they don't teach this research methods, and only in social department we teach, because the physicists have already techniques. He will get his answer. Anything come what may which lead you to his answer, he will do. But he won't say it's not methodologically or science is scientific because we do science. He will also do that rhetorically, but that's not very important for him. What they have is a set of techniques, not something called method. Right? So that's another thing is that fairness, justice is always a matter of method. Right? The symbol of justice is this woman who is, blindfolded and having a balance. So, what will be a figure for care? In fact, there's an interesting book on health by Enigma of Health by the German philosopher. And so, Georg Gadamer, who died at the age of 102, so proves that philosophy can actually give you a long life. And see, he gives the example of two people sawing a wood piece. Right? One person is on top, one person is on the bottom, and they are sawing the tree, the wood. So then what happens? There are no predetermined. Each one has to tune the movement according to the other, and both has to tune their movement according to the hardness of the wood. Right? And there's a kind of play which is going on there, but that play has to be responsive to each point what happens. Right? So that will be the kind of big difference between them. So one way is to look at the knowledge seeking to humility, but understand humility in the radical possible way. Right? Again, one way we can understand as scientists, we understand saying, look, we are not absolutely certain about our limits, but it is all a matter of probability. Right? There is some chance in everything. So then what we need to immediately do is rigorously formalize probability. Right? And I think I shared my view with you that if you rigorously formalize probability, then we'll have to conclude with Bayesian theorem that it is rational for me to hold that every new drug produced by modern medicine is ineffective. Right? Now, this is a standard point the doctor can also take. It's not like a skeptic. Imagine a doctor who is practicing, who is ready to hold that any new technique, I have reasonable thing that it won't is harmful or it doesn't work. Right? And then he will do the same thing. Right? But his conviction is this. Then you don't prescribe too many medicines and you don't subject your thing to too many stuff. And you also care involves respecting not the diseased body, but the disease itself. Right? You have to have a concept of disease where you have some respect for the disease. In other words, you will not practice a therapeutic routine by imagining a world without disease. We will miss diseases. Right? So can we think about that kind of a humility where we will say that we will not, right, the world without death. Right? We won't imagine. Right? And we are concrete. It's not because and personally I believe that in another 10, 15 years we might overcome the death business. Right? New chips and all will come, and I'm sure somebody will contribute to with reasonable continuity, then my memories and thought process will continue to live, right? And I will not have any problem with not having children because there will be many me's which will be going around. Which I think technology can already do it. It's our moral holding back is preventing us from. That's my guess from doing this. Already, like we are discussing disability studies, a lot of our faculties have been replaced by chips. Right? That's a very good thing for people with age, now color perception, movement perception, everything. Even if I can't do it, some chip will do it and respond to the situation. Like it's not like it will now feed everything to my consciousness. No, it will respond to the world as if there is somebody else who is living within me. Right? But even that it is. And another notion about, I will not go too much into it, which is the basis of care as something very ontological. It's not like care doesn't have to do with the way I know things, but in the way things are. Right? That's an ontological thing. Here, the most, I think, beautiful book is Visarman's Metaphysics and Politics of Compassion. You know, the whole Buddhist, we don't go into it in detail, the Buddhist philosophy, which actually questions the reality of everything we see around. Right? There is nothing. Right? Because the Buddhists have this whole logical argument saying that even causality is an untenable vision. Right? And there's nothing exists, nothing is real, but we have to hold that something real. I can't say that nothing is real. I'm sure lunch is very real. Right? I should be able to hold that nothing is real, but invite you and go and share lunch with you. Right? So I will attribute to Nisar a concept of ontological shyness. Right? So we really can't be confident in this world of things. They are actually their independence of my representation of them, right, is independent. Now, my belief in a modern cognitive agent is that there is a reality as it is represented by me. But I will be radical postmodernist and say there is no reality independent of my representation. Right? That's when I am very radical social scientist. I will say that all reality is a function of my representation. That reality is constructed, right? But still, there is some reality of my representation, their efficacy in it. But you can take a view where you say that both reality and representation are not these supports. Right? The shunyata, that's the Buddhist. And it is the Buddhist who gave us the greatest idea about compassion. How does compassion comes from this idea that there is no reality to anything, right? So that is compassion is an attitude by which you deal with these appearances, including the appearance of me, appearance of you, and appearance of things. So there are two models for them. One is an epistemological humility, that is a humility in the way I know things, or an ontological shyness, that is, I'm a bit shy in affirming anything in reality. These are two models which we need to really radicalize. That is one way to think that how much of you really mean this kind of stuff. And that's the time when we also see actually the human body. What is the health of the human body? Health of the human body is a silence of mind. Right? When the body is healthy, it doesn't scream. But only when illnesses begin to speak. Right? So somewhere we just need to respect the silence of this body. That also involves care. Like imagine somebody asking you every day in the morning, do you have a headache? Do you have a headache? Right? It will be too much of a disturbance. Right? So at some point there has to be an affirmation about the silence of the body. And I think this kind of ontological shyness and humility, I said, is actually, if you really want to understand, not the care of a suffering human living bodies. Why do we care then? Right? No human society leaves the dead people careless. Well, in fact, most respect is shown to the dead body, and there is all attempt to, preserve dead bodies and do everything to the dead body. So, how do you understand the care which we have towards? Is it just a projection that we take time to accept, we project them to be? That's not. In the workplace, there are procedures of postmortem which goes on. Even in the postmortem room, there is some procedural respect to the body. They don't treat it just like a body. Yeah. So, what is the source of this idea that we really care for dead people? And another specific kind of target of our pain is, care is often pain. I think we don't have time to go into it, but pain itself is a very, very difficult concept. We said, I have headache not in the way I have a car. If there's a certain difference, seems to be a difference in the way I have pain, and there seems to be a difference between having a certain pain and feeling that pain. Like, are they always, though there is a certain way in which I am not mistaken about my pain. I can't say that. I can say that I thought I had a car, but really I didn't have a car. The registration was not really properly. But I can't say that I have a headache, but actually I didn't have a headache, I had a toothache. It seems slightly incomprehensible to do that. So there seems to be some kind of validity of our claims to think. But at the same time, we know that pain is a very social phenomenon. There are different ways in which people treat pain. Right? There's a recent study about the cancer patient rooms in Africa, where actually people laugh. Whenever there is a patient comes to the cancer ward, everybody laughs. And the Western doctors find this totally inhuman behavior. And we also have so many rituals where pain is idealized, and the whole Christianity is the imitation of Christ's pain. And I think there is a story which once Scaria said that we were with a Mel Gibson movie, Passions of Jesus Christ was released. Kerala Christian church before Kerala story. They decided to screen this movie in some church on Sundays. But people were in Kerala were not very interested because that is long sequence of Gibson's suffering as Jesus Christ. But people were not very interested. So Scalia said apparently he had located a letter which is written by one of the early Portuguese. When they came here, they find that is already Christianity. So, but they wrote to Portugal saying that we also have Christians here, but these heathens are not moved by the suffering of our Lord as much as we are. So there's something about which this God suffering is not a big deal for us, but there are traditions where God suffering, you try to become by God by actually imitating his suffering. So how do we actually do with this pain? So there is something which is pain, which is internally affirmative, which I know it is. And the idea that all out of it is absolutely relative is something which is important. And here one thing is to some of these people who experiment radically with pain. And one writer I find is amazingly radical was Simone de Beauvoir. There was a sister of Herbert Weyl, a mathematician, a philosopher, and she died by the age of 34 due to self-imposed starving and TB. Now, she from the very beginning as a child, she was after suffering. When the World War I broke out, apparently she just left sugar. She said she wanted sugar. And then she became a Marxist. As soon as she became a Marxist, she didn't want to pursue academic career. She went and took a job as a worker in a factory. That was very strange. She comes from a wealthy background. She's an academic. But she said, no, if I am a Marxist, I have to work in this factory. And later, when the Second World War, I think, broke out, she demanded that she be sent to, first she worked as some spy for the Allies, and then she demanded that she will form a group of nations, and she wanted to be airlift to the warfront. She said, I want to take care of people in the warfront. So there is this systematic approach, and there is something in her writing about caring is frightening. She says, when I look into the eyes of a poor man, I see the poetry of poverty. Is that I am fascinated by not by his suffering or his beautiful nature, but the sheer poetry in his house, which I appreciate. That's what caring for. No, this is a very difficult proposition. And this is a proposition, its other side is found by people in the Nazi camp. Right? There are these people called the Muslim, or they are called like that, like Samon. Right? And their job, some of them are Jews, Muslim Jews. Their job is to assist the Nazis in carrying dead bodies to the fire and all that. And the Nazis, they said, moment the government of justice which involved the Nazis used to remove the whole filling of the German Jews before they are burned. So there's a furnace where they will burn those teeth and melt those teeth and get the gold. Right? And I read an autobiography by a German judge where the case comes in front of him that on a period they were expecting 4.5 kilograms of gold extracted from the dying Jews, but there were only 3 kilos. Where did the 1.5 kilo go? There's a huge argument. Nobody is worried about they are burning people. Right? So this is a peculiar thing about justice, that we can actually worry about the whole case on this, but just remain, silent about it. So care would be something opposite. So this puzzle and people who actually carry these dead bodies, they can also be killed one day or the other, but they don't know. They are helping to kill their own. So people notice that there are later those who escaped from there was an absolute indifference in the eyes of these people. There's absolute, you see suffering so much that in your eyes there is an inhumanity. And somewhere, Simone Weil says, the glitter of inhumanity. The caring which goes to that extent of responding to this glitter, this absolute indifference. Somebody who is dead in himself, right? How much that speed is something. So this idea of empathy, which we started with, recognizing others, their specificity, etc. If you really pursue it, it leads us to this dangerous context in which. So what is it this person who is nurse, who is taking care of a chronically ill person in a palliative care? We have no account of what do we really think that they are still merciful and all that, but effective, alert caring, what is it glued on to? And just one more point I want to say is today caring happens, of course, in the market, right? You pay for all care services, they are all thing, and it's also very technologically intensive process, right? And how do we understand the role of technology in caring? Right? We often think that's a bunch of instruments, but the thing is, soon technology is going to take over this. Right? So what do we expect this machine caring? I just want to say one instance. This is the way Taiwan handled COVID. You know that Taiwan did not have an emergency declared, nor they had lockdown. But they very effectively handled it. So they had their digital minister was this transgender first minister called Andre Tang. She was she or him one. It was a real digital genius. So what she planned was that first time they decided that no emergency, life will go on as normal, but we will collect data, but we will not start any new data collection point from home. People can do it, right? People give mobile data about the places they visit, right? And this data will be accessed to amateur people in order to come up with contacts, right? So I can decide if I want to go to a music concert, what is the amount of people there, who are all the people going there. So it is totally amateur who do it, right? Stage and there is no point where all the data about any human being is kept. And every data about any human being is erased after 28 days. Right? So it allows people to contribute data and also manage their movement according to their safety, right? Using these things. There's no central agency comes into it. No procedure is done for the entire population. Right? Now, this, it's very important thing there was that apparently there were a lot of digital, there were fake news in there also. Right? In Taiwan, so one of the fake news that they are going to now make, if you go to a haircutting salon, then all your bank account will be seized because you are contributing to that, all your bank. There is no such law. So the Prime Minister himself came on another fake news. They actually wanted it. They decided to fight it with another fake news. They said rumor versus human. Right? So this guy said, he also, in his youth, he had lot of hair. Now he has become bald. And if you guys don't do your regular hair cutting, you will also become like me. You really don't want to become like me. And it became viral, and people suddenly realized that they should carefully go to a barber shop. So there is what they are actually, I'm trying to say is that what her idea was to develop a collective intelligence, which is care. It's not a top-down model, nor it is to care for individuals in some manner. And this is the time I want to leave you with this idea about what is care for community medicine. I think many of you are from community medicine. Right? How do you think about caring in a technologically intensive way? Right? So we today have two paradigms for caring. One is the community paradigm and the other is the immunity paradigm. Right? So we generally think about immunity things which are done over a community, but actually many of us are very uncomfortable with any notion of community. Right? So I was asking yesterday, maybe that why don't you use the word social? Like we said earlier, it was called social and preventive medicine, and you became community. So maybe it is, why did it become community? And you should know that think about human being as this kind of communities is very politically challenging, right? It's a very patriarchal community with traditional values, etc. That's not the kind of groups which any of us would like to build. Like we all want to question it and enlarge it and try to become, right? And then try to become what if we want to come out of it? Then we want to become individual, that's also nice. Right? Now anthropology says the word immunity and community has the word munis. Right? That's what the thing between immunity and munis actually means a kind of uncontrolled giving. That's what munis means. Right? So communities were originally anthropologically understood as communities based on uncontrolled living, huge rituals, right? Huge feasts, huge wars, right? Which are uncontrolled. Nothing in that society would be done under a calculation. So individual was an immunity device of the society. Right? That's what, how do you prevent such a society from really become destructive? Then you have to come up with notions like individual. So today, so individual is, so you cannot say that what we bring community, then we will get individual. Reality is about some collective intelligence of care, which is more than community. Right? So then how do you That's why we need to look for vaccines or whatever it is. There will be efforts of immunity, like individually one way in which we form some kind of individual liking, rights, responsibilities, etc. in order to form this. Now, technology and caring demands us for another collective intelligence. How do we look at this newness and extend it beyond notions of orthodox community, etc.? That's one challenge which care and technology versus. I think it's better.
So, excuse me, sir, in Taiwan, they were allowing other people to come inside their country. No, this COVID, during COVID, I'm hearing this for the first time. So, I'm asking whether other people were allowed inside the country or where there was lockdown, like they cannot go outside and come inside.
About Taiwan, that I don't know. I can check whether they. But inside there was no
Restrictions.
lockdown.
Yeah, so but I'll try to some of the ideas that kept coming to me, I try to remember and share. So one is, I would like to start with a woman and a woman's body. Women who have recently given birth to a child and are currently breastfeeding the child. When there's another baby crying, they tend to produce milk, and sometimes they may have to have a change of clothing. So there's something about women where, when we talk about the interpersonal, something there which is beyond what probably most men can experience. Now, from that, I go to this situation where lot of care is done by women. I think if we take this panchayat where we are in, let's say it has a population of 20%, there may be 100 to 200 patients currently who are bedridden or bound to their homes or rooms, and I can blindly guess that 80 to 90% or higher of the care is provided by women. Now, care is not only in the face of illness or injury. There's a lot of care of children, and there's care of your filial care. You care for your parents or in-laws. Again, that is disproportionately comes in a woman's area. Now, and I think a lot of women have tried to say that this is a lot of work. So care as labor, it's a lot of work. And so a lot of work, attention to care has looked at hours of care. That in my 24 hours, how many hours do I provide care? And some other people have looked at intensity of that care. So they try to look at, say, the activities of daily living. That's something we do. The Bharatan Index is what we do as doctors. The activities of daily living, we list them and there is a score. To what extent of this is done by the individual themselves and what is provided by them. So, and then there is things like the European ECOG assessment of, they look at to what extent the person is dependent on and whether it involves heavy lifting. And then a lot of studies have looked at how men and women perceive care differently. Men sometimes are better with scheduling appointments, planning the finances, whereas women tend to do a lot of the cleaning of urine motion. So sometimes again women have raised voices that we end up doing the dirty part of the care work. Care as labor has been recognized as a category by different groups. So the Labour Ministry of Kerala has tried to put minimum wages for care work. 1 hour of care work, this is the minimum wages that is required. and the state has tried to train Kudumbashree workers as paid care providers, which I believe is a reinforcing of the feminized form of care. Demographic data across the world has started collecting data on care, people receiving care and people giving care, and LASI data has also gone there, but for weird reasons, I don't know. In LASI data, a lot of people receive care, but nobody in the household gives them care. A lot of people give care, but nobody in their household receive care. So in our institute, we have this joke that people from some households go to some other household, give care and come back to. But then there are very good data in the US, from Canada, Japan. Demographic surveys look at care as a category, whether we are receiving care, whether we are giving care, the extent of care, so on and so forth. Feminists again have talked about, to my understanding, have gone, Carol Gilligan kind of kept care as a woman's, domain, but people later have said that there are men who think like the women in those systems, and there are women who think like the kind of logical way that men in that experiment were thinking. So we cannot really dichotomize as care as a exclusively a woman's domain, but it remains disproportionately, it falls on the woman to do the caring work. And they talk about global care chains, where rich countries pull out women from poor countries to do their care work. And this leads to global care chains, and some others have drawn attention to this leads to a global care drain. So this is the way some of the readings that I collected during this session. Coming specifically to care from a biomedical context, for some reason, it's assumed that we are all caring, but many times it's not. And as a biomedical person, we are always tuned to train the caregiver. So there is a stroke and we are discharging. Now our job is to train the caregiver to do A, B, C, D, E. So when we talk about chronic illnesses, the whole force of the state, the biomedical establishment, is to train the caregiver to give better care. Now, while that has its definite advantages, because the person who needs care gets better care. So, if you take good care of the skin, you don't have a bed sore. Okay, so we can train the caregiver how to take care of the skin so that there is no bed sore, how to take care of the catheter so that there is no infection. So all focuses on training the caregiver for better care. But sometimes the caregiver is again. So when we talk about the power differential, to me it's been confusing, because yes, this sick person is dependent on the care. If there are, like, here also we may find old lady stroke living alone, and the caregiver is the person in the next house, will be visiting, giving the bath, changing the clothes and feeding. If that person stops, this person may die in a matter of a few days. So it's the care that is keeping this person alive. And sometimes I feel the demographic advantages we have had. We say our longevity is now 70. It's because people care and keep these people from dying and bringing down the statistic, the average longevity. But what about the caregiver? Many times it's a woman, and she may have limited voice, and it's when you think of, say, dementia. There was this movie with Mohanlal. he forgets his wife and he remembers his, news from childhood or something. But it's a very real thing. You are losing that relationship there. Person becomes a different person, but you are still expected to provide that care. So what about me then? Uh, Let me say, chronic kidney disease. So I'm a woman and my spouse is having dialysis. I'm expected to arrange for the transport, go to the hospital, be there 3 days a week. And I find that sometimes the person stops having an existence independent of the machine, the technology. But what does it mean to me? I have not bound to that technology, but directly, but I'm bound there. And if the earlier person's dialysis is extended for some reason, so I find that dialysis patients and their caregivers, the dyads, when they talk, it's like if we are late for a dialysis, we are shouted at like anything because it's after their dialysis somebody else has to come in. So then that person will be going back home at 11 p.m. if I am late for my 2 p.m. dialysis appointment. So what does this mean to the, it's the responsibility of the caregiver there to make sure that these things get well. And when that's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, we're talking about the temporality. And so we hear all these stories of women who have finished a PhD and then what, saying that all my classmates are abroad now. I have lost. When I chose this man on my own, so now my mother says you make this decision, so you are responsible for that. So how does she reconcile with all these things? Cancer is of course another situation where the experience is very different. So caring for dementia, caring for stroke becomes physically very intensive. Caring for dementia is different ballgame altogether. Caring for chronic kidney failure and dialysis becomes another thing. Caring for heart failure, caring for a child with disability. It's an entirely different thing where we have many women whose husbands leave them and they are left to fend for themselves. So, yeah, these are the things which I'd like to share.
Thanks for the many insights you have given us. Certain things I want to tell. One is about you said about carelessness, about suicide. So in a week, I see more than 5 to 6 suicide attempts to control, especially the females. At least 1 or 2 are less than 15 years. School children, they come to us. So they are mentally weak or I don't know about that. Mentally weak or strong. But one thing I found out that especially the children, the female kids, they come to us for suicide attempts. Usually I ask about the father, but the father is, where is your father? So the usually ask Julie's like ask the girl, she's and most of these girls, their father, either the father is in jail or they separated or not living with the girl or the family. So I think some emotional deprivation or something in there, or some relationship problems or something in there behind that, whether it's weakness or cannot tell you that. I cannot say that who does the suicide they are to attempt the suicide they are strong. I don't know. But suicide attempts, the boys or the men, they succeed because they are strong. Maybe they are strong, that's why. But females, their suicide attempts are usually failed attempts. So another thing about the body knows itself. I think You've given many valuable insights, but certain things are philosophers' imagination, I think. Because you said that your body can recognize the Brahmotrans as body. That's what you said there, Sanil. But actually, what do you mean by that? It is your body, actually, you are recognizing the other person, isn't it? You are not recognizing. According to medical point of view, if you receive the blood of Brahmaputra's blood, it's a different group. Your body may not identify that. Human body may reject that. In that way, you can say your body recognize the other person or don't recognize. Even a bacteria enters your body or in my body, it may reject or because of the immunity. That does not mean that your body recognizes the bacteria but in a way, actually, our mind recognizes, isn't it? Other person. But there is an immunity there. The another thing you said about the tickling and all those things. But also, I don't think that is relevant. So that's this thing is a proprioception. Because I stand here, I can know where is my leg is there, even if my eyes are closed. It's called proprioception. See, in that way, I can understand myself. So that does not mean that my body recognizes there is something that recognizes other people. So actually, it's mind that person recognize the other. So there are a lot of things to discuss, but I don't think there is a time later we will think about it.
However, there is a lot more, at least how I understand health is a lot more than that. How we, like, whether we can function properly to lead a life, that is, it is not in the sense of biology, but rather whether we can perform what we are supposed to do. So this is actually from a personal experience of mine. When I started taking psychiatric medication for some condition, before that I was disturbed all the time, and there was no silencing of the body because in the head there were a lot of things going on, and I can't concentrate. I'll be having very like self-harming thoughts and things like that. And then I started taking medication, and the thoughts were silenced. But I was not able to do anything because I was drowsy all the time. I was feeling sleepy all the time because of the medication. And it affected my academic performance as well. Because I was not able to read. I was sleeping all the time, or even if I'm awake, it's not possible to do some job that needs a lot of concentration. So I don't consider me healthy in such a situation. So I would like to know what health means in that context. And another one is that you said care has to stop at some point. The prolonged care leads to dependence, which I understand that it is a serious concern. But my worry here is who decides to, who gets to decide when to stop the care. I'm asking this again from a context of psychiatric, like care to psychiatric conditions. Because in certain cases, the lacking of care or sudden stopping of care from the close people to the patient may lead to or pushing them to a serious or difficult, more difficult situation. So who gets to decide that, and what is the criteria for that? And then one question. Okay, it was about you said scientific status of medicine is not a relevant question for you, but as I understand, the scientific question becomes like the scientific status of medicine becomes a serious question because it proceeds with some understanding of what is considered normal and abnormal. And they want to show that it is not based on certain value judgments, rather on the basis of certain natural facts. Which I consider as important, because if it is something of something that has to do with only the values, let's say in some countries where religious practices are very strong, or discrimination towards women are very strong and who are not allowed to come to the forefront. A girl child who wants to become a doctor or an engineer, or who wants to come to the forefront, may be considered as mentally ill. So they want to show like the scientific status there matters because okay, this is because of some biological conditions, and we can intervene on that to cure it. Uh, so so the question is, what is your opinion on that? Like to have a very objective criteria, which makes it scientific, uh, that differentiates normality or abnormality. Yeah. And one comment, it's not a question. I find this caring for psychological conditions very like making the situation much more complex, because I know that like from my experience with psychologists, they are supposed to provide unaltered support to the patient. Like when one person goes there and shares their experience, they are not made to, like they shouldn't make patient feel more guilty of their actions or more ashamed of their actions or behavior. So, for a person who knows this, that it is their job to care for me, it's not because I did everything right, it's not because of that they're doing this, but it is part of their job. So, that makes us in a very difficult situation whether to believe them or not. Me as a person have a lot of confusion whether I did certain actions because of my condition or because I'm a moral bad person. I'm not getting an answer for that. And the care there is making it difficult to get an answer.
One thing I want to say about the care work, that is a very important idea. And as we know in modern capitalist economy, one way that justice demands that everything is in at work, and that is reputation. For example, the owners comes to my house. I want them to have some minimum working hours. There is a minimum salary respected. They get their leaves. But my also I was trying to say that the this notion of fair wage, right? As we know from self, that's not actually a morally defensible stand. They need more. Even every worker demands more than money's wages. But in care, I want to say that there is something which is irreducible to the justice economy. And we know that, for example, art. We know that there is some amount of contractual things and legal experts here. Contractual things are there in art. But remuneration in art is not tied to any fair wage or work. We have. I'm not saying that that economy is actually just or anything, right? The superstar also and others. But we do have, we know how to see certain domains not as entirely work. So in that sense, I think there has to be money. That is what we give to our caregivers has to go more than this fairness thing. But at least this much has to be accepted. That's one language which we know how to do justice to people, make them as work. And right, there's also a demand to make the household work of women as work and pay. Now, those rules have to be made, but we know for sure that that's not really adequate to them. And the other thing was about the women. The Caribbean says that women are caring, men are playing this. But that's to be understood as a probably feminist, not a factual thing. Definitely, as you said, men, there are factually many men. But feminists make this claim that look, I am noticing a distinction in the conceptual field, only women have an interest in making it. Right? Men were caring, but why did you guys speak about it? Why didn't you make it? You guys have made all your ethical system saying justice is the big thing, caring is emotional. Right? There are people who still argue that caring is an irrational issue, and unjust thing because care is always geared towards specific things. A mother cares her children more than neighbors do. Right? That is built in it. It's irrational, it's unfair, it's biased. Right? The moment you get into your care, you are saying bias is okay. Bias is a good in doing that. So at that time, the feminists felt that look, feminism is the only political subjectivity for which restriction is significant. So now I think it's more or less everybody would have to admit this case. And also the caring for things like Alzheimer's. So as you rightly said, a lot of caring is now thing that doctor will give these things and you do it outside the clinic, hospital, like you give directions and like. But what the more effort was to say that it's a any other cognitive base the caregiver need to have, which is not the caregiver of a doctor or a scientist. It is a very knowledge base. Was it just an emotional being nice to another person who served? And you know that's a place like there are distinct patterns of Alzheimer's. How do you understand somebody like when you look at an Alzheimer's person body means, do you see a person whose memory is weak? Or we see a person who is not herself. Right? If we just better that person is somebody else. Right? So Catherine Malabo has this thing book on newly wounded. Right? She thinks that Alzheimer's is a new wound. Actually, that's a powerful experience is that this is a person who has kind of downgraded herself to a lower level of self. And the person one is holding on to this one. Right? The dead person is carrying feelings. So it's important for us to come with richer discussion. That is why medical humanities and literary works very often it's literary works which comes up with an adequate description about what we are reading with. The medical diagnosis of things, and again, medical diagnosis of the neurologist is finding the neural correlation of a stupid description. Right? Once you have a rich description about the phenomena, then you need to have a more radical vision of brain. For example, Alzheimer's new descriptions have demanded that you need to have a notion of brain plasticity. You can't see that brain as fixed neurons which have certain functions, but you need to go for a parallel architecture and you need to go for an idea of plasticity where brain keep rewiring according to its task. So as they say, if you watch TV in your early childhood, your brain is wired in a different way. These are popular science reading, but there's something like brain plasticity. So we need to have descriptions which our neurologists should take very seriously. That is the level to which this knowledge and care should go into. Right? In that sense, the idea about the body knows itself. Right? When I say this, I don't buy this distinction between body and mind. Right? The division of labor, body and something, like that the mind does the emotional thing. That's the kind of paradigm which now no longer tenable. Right? We all know that what is mind is brain. And we can adequately describe everything I do without having this technology. I can just use brain. These are what brain facts. The issue is that what you said, the proprioception, that's exactly the proprioception is a very serious thing. Right? The issue is not that how do I recognize rebound. The idea is that rebound is not me. And I recognize all these features. I recognize down as somebody who belongs to some other person. Not even that it's some other person like me. That's also he is also some other person like me. Then like he is somebody who has an absolute authority. He can come with something strange. Right? Something about being in this world which cannot be accessed from this place is accessible from there. These are all things which and I'm sure science at some point will be able to handle these. I will not take this discussion about science of it. So I start with it, it's very important, but this notion that body has what traditionally we escape by saying that oh, these kinds of complicated things that then ghost in the machine called mind. Right? Now we know there's no ghost in the machine. I just have a brain. Right? There is a brain and things going on, and there are management mechanisms for this. Right. So let's not, I think very important thing about care that we think that in order to articulate care and all that, we should become physicalist. We should keep something called mental into it. Right? That's the way to take care of this. Like, no, we need to give up this idea about there are this ghost, the seeds of emotion, persons, things like this. We should load all these things to neurobiology and see correction and say, these are the things, these are the phenomena for which we need a neurobiological outcome. That's why I think medical humanities has somewhere has to turn towards solid biological sciences and neurobiology as somewhere. Right? And that competent we should have, like going and doing courses on.
May I intervene that just that idea that came before it by Lucid is there was this book with women are from Venus, men are from Mars. And many of the statements there have apparently been disproved. I don't know the basis for that, but that's what I've heard people say. But it does explore the limbic system and the amygdala. Women having larger amygdala and limbic system, and they are able to, and it connects it with the evolutionary theory that in order to protect the offspring, the female of the species is alert to subtle changes in the environment. And that is why when men go into a sari shop, there are 10 saris in pink, and for women, it's 10 different colors. So that's one thing. And this has been quoted when there was, I forgot the case, but there was a woman, forensic medicine doctor. She identified the poison and the men missed it because her sense of smell was sharper than I forgot that. It's a very famous case, and I know the madam also, but I don't remember names, so I'm sorry. That's my disability, not remembering names. But that's one thing I wanted to just put it here. So there can be a neurobiological connection that we could explore, but then when we come to the things like morality, this morality when lunch is waiting and morality when I need to catch a bus is different from morality when I'm well fed and no train or bus to catch. So things as that can keep changing. I think the metaphor of two people sawing that is so apt there because I recollect daughter-in-law of caregiver of a bedridden mother-in-law with Parkinson's. And the mother-in-law says that she doesn't, at night, when the bedsheet sometimes goes off and she's unable to cover herself and she feels cold, she doesn't wake up. The daughter-in-law saying that she's had a bad, tough day. I don't want her to lose her sleep. But sometimes it's so bad that I cry silently. So I thought, who is caring for whom? Okay. So, the dynamic, I think it's just like two people on the song is who act there. Just want to add one thing. In some countries, again, I don't remember the place, there is something called a care bank. So there is a way of, documenting to authorities that I have provided so many of care hours. So rather than monetizing it, you get your care contributions documented somewhere so that when I need the care or when one of my important somebody needs a care, I can tap into the care bank to just fund and something.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I think we need to have really good care apps, right? Like Uber or other. Very intelligently, morally developed. I think that the lot of political thinking going on in these apps of now they are developed by monopolies. But people are thinking about what will be a delivery app written by the workers. But then they can actually inform each other about their ID. They can share. So I think that way we need to, they all will, this will be a contributory economy of care. Right? Where not merely wages, but in my youth, I should be able to take care of somebody so that somebody will take care of it. Not that it will extend the relationship, but some collective good, a contributory economy of care might be really important. Because I just wanted to say about silence. See, when I said silence, I didn't mean that no pause. I meant exactly what you meant. That is, I feel normal functioning of my body. Right? That's my method. Now, what is normal? Right? Now, I call silence because there is a tendency to say that normal is a fact. That's I mean, BP 120/80 is normal. Right? This is, I wanted to say that normality is not a fact. Normality is a domain where I have a wide range of behavioral possibilities. That's what for me normality. What illness does is that it reduces my range of operations. Right? So if we can think about, see, I am very, which we should really understand this idea that doctors don't have time. Right? Partly it is economy, work pressure, and that. But this whole business doesn't demand at some point time. It's also clamoring from spending time in certain other ways. So it's very important for us to understand the normality. For example, one sign of a normal health for me is the ability to commit errors. Right? So I mentioned that is a global relationship to the normal. Normal is something like I keep my body factual parameters stable. That's a rough way of understanding. But we know that we all live outside, right? And all when our mind speaks, I don't want all that to be silence. Right? There are some people who can really talk only when they are mad. Right? So they want certain things to be there, but certain things to be nurtured. They don't want the whole madness to go in one of them. Right? So it is not fractional. So that's why we need to have a slightly more open understanding of that normality where the silence is not activity, but silence I mean a comfortable exhaustion. It's a comfortable working across a whole range of activities, and it comes back to a reduced level when I am.
So, usually when we talk about care, there is one person who is caring or a network where you have lots of a person or something is going towards death, who is taking care of that person. We always personally care like that. So when I was doing my fieldwork, I came across this. I don't know whether I should call it tendency of kids of farmers, teenage kids of farmers. I use the word committing suicide deliberately because I believe in the agency of people. So, kids of farmers committing suicide, especially teenage kids, where I happened to read their suicide notes. I collected a few of it and I've been going through it and I'm writing a paper on that person. So, where you see them writing why the reason was taking that step. So they elaborate the difficulties their parents are facing, and then they end their letter by saying that I'm doing this so that my parents and my family will survive, because they'll be one more like less stomach to fill. And there are girls, teenage girls who died, saying that like my father will be prevented from paying my dowry, taking the expenses. So this is like a sort of embracing death as a form of care. So how do we understand death in the context of this, where the person is giving care in the form of embracing death? So I think we should also start thinking about that also.
Altruistic suicide, right? It can also be.
Yeah, that's a very limited understanding of it. Yeah, actually, journalists call this suicide as altruistic, but I think it's a very, in that context, it's a very problematic word to use.
Yeah, no, I just through that idea about suicide, I think it's very important for us to appreciate the care. That's one challenge for us to participate into care. And for example, these are all important when somebody goes to you know that But in my view, there is that idea about care has to somehow, for example, in Japan, they had these centers where somebody really want to commit suicide or there, then you get a spiritual companion. And then you disappear from it. They have this internal forest kind of thing. And you spend long stretches of time where you talk to your spiritual companion. And there you decide not to commit or commit suicide. Both are other. The companion will not judge you by saying that's wrong. Right? What do you think to ensure that this is a possibility which will also pursuing all other possibility, you be well informed. So the care procedure is to be with some person and if you look at internet now there are so many places where safe suicide methods are given to us, right? But there's no formal mechanism of tapping them on because the state today cannot think about giving the right to life. It wants to come, so it will allow euthanasia, but it will not allow you to be expert mediated, but it's not going to allow you things. It's not going to allow you revolution. It will not give you a right to revolution, no right to revolution. So it's conceptually it cannot do. But that's the time we should think about. There is an just to add to what there is a discussion about the silence of the body. See, caring means what? We are not trying to bring the body to some normal well balance. I think medical science itself, yesterday we had a discussion about balancing everything. With balancing metaphysics, even medical science has developed in mind. Well, it's not to come back to any normalcy. We have this theory about psychiatric development research we trying to put in practice. This kind of way the other capital society values, etc. Which is in one level true. But caring should enable you to pursue radical ideas about well-being. Right? What are the radical possibilities of normality you should do? It shouldn't bring you back to some normal. That's not what normal is. Normal includes pursuing radical possibilities of existence. Right? And that is, see, that's where we need to go beyond this care and empathetic relationship between some strong and weak. It has to be an anonymous system. That will be the case now in different systems. Excellent.
As a doctor, I was a caregiver as a bystander, as we call, and where I required care and when I was denied care. So that was I was thinking. And as a caregiver, as a doctor, when I was a caregiver, it was really interesting to me to see that care is distant from justice because for me, care was also in a way related to justice and in a way related to my sense of duty as well. So it's not a legally imposed duty, that's not what I mean. But what is right as a person, what is right to me? And that is what I tried to give with a very limited context, I have to say, to the patients that I saw. So at that time, I think for care, most often for doctors, care is about diagnosing and treating and curing. But I think care is much more than that in the sense that if you touch them a bit, if you smile at them a bit, or if they are sad, then if you can reflect that on yourself, that you kind of, that is the way that I tried it. But not exactly, I was not trying to that way. I did very little practice as such. Only during my internship and then 1 year during my voluntary rural services, only time that I practiced. And even during my practice, it was different for me. As I said, the thing that doctors do not have time, sometimes it's real, but sometimes it is not so, as what I feel. Because it is not like all doctors do not have time all the time. It is not like that. Definitely, while I was working, there will be from 8 to 1 o'clock, I will have to see some 100 patients. So you have to talk to 100 people in that short time, diagnose. And so there you do not have that time to give care as such. Then the next 6 months, I work with the endosulfan victim rehabilitation cell. So that is a mobile medical unit. So sometimes you go to the patients. When you are working in an OP, it is very crowded. But when you are going into the field and seeing people in their circumstances, that is another thing. At that time, there you have. But at that time, when I look back, what my limitation was that I didn't know what else to do. I could touch, I could maybe smile, I could reflect on what they feel. But still, there was nothing much of the care that I knew what to do as care. Even the palliative nurse who comes, their sense of care is also about changing the catheter or shifting the patients or removing the bandage or things like that. So I think as a care provider, as a doctor, the care is often limited to relieving of that physical problems of the patient, most often. Then as a caregiver for a patient, like for my father or somebody, and another thing about care that I felt is that it is also exhausting. It is an exhausting work. We often associate care with compassion and love, but it is also exhausting. It's not that you don't love them or you're not compassionate or you don't understand their problems. It is just that it is so exhausting. I remember like during internship we have a very exhausting work when you're house surgeons or when you're doing PGs. There was this time when I was trying to eat my lunch and I opened my packet and my tiffin, and then an old lady, she went into cardiac arrest. So I had to go there and resuscitate her. And so I went and resuscitated her. She died. She was very old, really old. And this is something that we have to do because we have to resuscitate. However old the patient is, however sick the patient is, however fragile the patient is, even if you're sure that the patient is going to die, you have to resuscitate because that is how it is being done now. Or at that time, at least. And then I explained to them, I tell the patient of their bystanders that she has died. And then they cry and then they stand there for some time. And then I come back and finish my lunch. So there is some kind of a detachment that I have to do. Otherwise, I am going to suffer because of what is happening. And this is not a single incident because during my internship itself, I might have declared some 10 or 15 deaths. And this is traumatic to us also. So that caring, even as a detached caring, it brings some kind of trauma to the person that is living. Second is as a caregiver, as a bystander. And there, what I feel is about what is being denied. What's being denied to me, or what is being denied to the person that I am accompanying. Or why isn't the patient's right not considered there? That is the way I'll be thinking about it. But at the same time, I feel there is a level of submissiveness that we have to be there when we are with doctors. And it is a truth also. And I think it is something that needs to change. Because most often, even among the discussion among doctors itself, doctors will say that patients come after reading Google and then question them. One part of it is that sometimes it is very stressing when they read articles in PubMed and very recent publications or very recent very minute things, something that happens 1% of the time, and then come and question us about it. They come to question us. So that is one thing. But sometimes everyone is interested in their own health, and when they have technology to know about it, I think people do that. So there is some sort of, I think there is a need to in training doctors. I think there is a need to kind of see that people will do that, and there is some way. It's not like, and I think also is that I don't think people as well as doctors should think that a doctor is a know-it-all. It's not required of you. You cannot feed all those information in your brain. It's not humanly possible. So demanding that is also a problem, but thinking that not having that is my disability, is like that is my shortcoming is also a problem. And I think as a doctor, when a patient asks me something, I should be given the opportunity to check its veracity, and then respond. And that kind of a system should be there is something that I think, as a provider. Then, as somebody who needed care, I went through a severe trauma. And at that time, what I felt is that as a patient or as somebody who's seeking care, what you also need is validation of your feelings that you never get in modern medicine. Often, often. I'm not saying all the doctors are the same, no, nobody validates. But the thing is that I didn't get that validation from the place that I wanted it most or I expected it the most. And when I got it only, I understood that along with symptomatic relief, what I also wanted was validation. As she mentioned about guilt, that when she goes sees a doctor, she's again feeling guilty about the condition. And I have to say that I still feel guilty about the trauma that happened to me. I'm still not able to overcome it in some way. In some way, whenever I am in such a circumstance, I relive the trauma. And that is one thing about trauma, and I don't know how psychiatry sees trauma now, because I learned psychiatry for 2 weeks during my MBBS time, so I don't know how psychiatry is treating it now. But I don't know from my experience with the doctor that I saw. And also, I think it is all a limitation because there is limited vocabulary to put in words like what you're feeling. What you're feeling and what they write down in words are entirely different things from your perspective. For them, it is the same. But from your perspective, that is what they put down as a word, is not what you feel. Because, for me, after I went through the trauma, I was very angry. Because I connected that with an injustice that was being done to me, and the entire system did an injustice to me. And that's the way I felt about it. And I was really depressed. And I didn't know I was depressed. That is another important thing. That even though I was a doctor, I didn't know I was depressed because we see depression as a really pathological situation, and that anger or that lack of interest didn't seem to me as to me. Even I didn't perceive it as a depression, and only when it crossed a threshold. I am like a person who is like I always try to come up from my problems. I always try to analyze my problems and find solutions. I'm such a person. So, not that I don't get affected by things, but I do try to come out of it. And here, I couldn't come out of that feeling worthless. That is one thing that I felt, feeling worthless or feeling guilty of something that happened to me. Okay, something like you fall and then you feel guilty of falling. It was like that. I mean, you fell maybe because you are careless, but still you fell. It is an accident that has happened to you, and you have to feel guilty about that and carry that guilt every day, or something like that. And at that time, I felt that caring is also about validating how you feel. So that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, thank you for that valuable and rich description about care from the point of a doctor also. So I think all of it is not going to take any time. So what we're actually bringing out is two contexts. One is the context of work and the other is the context of care. And we need to think about how are they related. So very often we say that care is nothing but extension of some pure procedures. Right? But same way unfairly, when I expect a doctor to spend more time with me, I am expecting who is an expertise in pure to do a bit caring for me. Right now, he doesn't have the capability. But we see that maybe there is. Like today, in order to know, I have to be a disinterested agent. I shouldn't have any other knowledge, caring, etc. It's not. But traditionally, people say it was different. For example, if you look at Indian architectural texts like in Manasaya, right? Who is a good architect? Now, he should, of course, he has to take part in stuff. And then he should love the tree. He should love the birds on the tree. Right? These are all important conditions for him to practice his knowledge. Now, we don't put any such knowledge on a physicist or a medical doctor. But if you really want to say that, that's what say care, that is knowledge. If you are becoming a knowledge seeker, then you will need to have certain inbuilt qualities of care. That's something which is not easy to think. It's very, and the same way as we said, this question about, that's why one reason that asked me about science, right? So I don't expect my cure or care to be under the title of science. That's why I don't expect it. From there's another question in what sense medical science is science. That I have philosophical interest in doing that, right? How much of formalization a discourse needs, right? What does define a discourse of science? Something which we need to talk about. In medical science, it is actually their ability to translate their concept from judiciary, prison reform, etc. That's what makes it a big. The science thing, it's not legitimize me, right? I have to go to a doctor to get a sick certificate, right? So it doesn't have to influence me. It has already found a procedurality with, right? So there, I have to share a joke with which I already shared with some of them, the way this mechanism works. Even after the vaccine, there was a national, international art show in India, and they made vaccine certificate the eligibility grade. You have to send a vaccine certificate to get a delegate process. Now, I am not vaccinated, I want to attend it. Right? I don't understand what does a doctor's expertise have to do with meeting the answers. But medical science would translate it knowledge so that it is a point of interest. But then I fight it by how do I fight it? I write on a Word document that I am not vaccinated. Then I stored it as a PDF document with the same file size as the vaccination certificate. Uploaded it and I got my delegate forms. So this is how you deal with this so-called sign. But for me, the medical discourse is to be dealt with that side. Later I will go when I have a day, right? And I will go for a medical certificate. I will also forge a medical certificate if I want to study. Right? But there's another question, what is scientific state? And I think medical discourse had a golden chance of becoming a solid science when it is really. But it's this evolutionary theory, the mechanic. As somebody, Akila, I could tell her, she said, evolutionary theory says survival of the fittest, people with disabilities will vanish. Darwin say neons, things, right? But then it doesn't. But I'm sure with neurobiology, with cognitive science, I'm hopeful that medical discourse will find a proper theoretical, and it's need not have the support of state and. But that's a different. But what you said is also your detachment is very, very crucial for care. Yeah. And one way, what I do about experimenting for me is some way in which to ensure that you are detached from it. So it will end. Because in fact, psychoanalysts, some of the famous psychoanalysts, actually they time their encounter. That you will be paying a heavy price, but they will say today's engagement is 5 minutes. Right? The whole idea is that every encounter should have a post ending. Don't come here to see what the doctor is imposed by the hospital conditions. Psychoanalysts impose on themselves. They will cut, they don't allow the patient to go on forever. Right? And in fact, Lacan says that their illness is cured when the patient knows when to turn up for the next session. Right? And they quicken it very much, not by saying that ending this is very important. You can't end it when you feel